Alright guys, back on the World Class Happiness channel. I'm Dominic. I'm going to speak about various different characters today, different people who you may or may not have heard of. Most of them you would have definitely have heard of. And I'm going to talk to you about them because they all link in a certain way. They all have something in common, albeit they're all very different. Now, the names are, I'm going to give you a list, and these are, they may appear random, but they all have something in common. So Dana White, Conor McGregor, Usain Bolt, Muhammad Ali, and Princess Diana. All right, all seem a little bit random. Obviously, some belong to martial arts and combat. Usain Bolt is a sports person, but obviously Princess Diana doesn't appear to fit in anywhere. But I'm going to explain how they all kind of link and how they all have something in common. Now, if we go back to the top, Dana White, for those of you who don't follow the UFC or know Dana White, he's the UFC president, Ultimate Fighting Championship president. And during the pandemic, he was continuing his sport. He was allowing it to continue, and he fought against a lot of opinions on people who were very against him continuing during the pandemic, and he had to fight against all different types of authorities and stuff to get his sport back on, and he was able to kind of get access to an island which he called Fight Island, and they had their own location or venue in Las Vegas as well. So they were doing different events, UFC events, between those two locations. And basically during the pandemic, UFC was pretty much the only sport on the planet that was continuing. All right, when you consider things like football or soccer, and all the big sports in America like basketball and baseball and American football, they were all off. You know, like I say, soccer and all the tennis events and all the big sort of events that you would normally see on a regular basis on TV and stuff like that. They'd all just completely stopped, as was a lot of other events and things in general, that the world more or less come to a standstill. But he was able to continue putting on fights, putting on events with the UFC, and there was a lot of pushback on that, a lot of people against it, a lot of people saying that he was a bit of a lunatic and you know, silly for doing so. And despite that, he decided that he was going to continue and he was going to find a way, and he managed to obviously get access to Fight Island and the location in Las Vegas, and obviously carried on putting on events as normal. Okay, and was one of the only sports to do so. Now, Conor McGregor, who was sort of next on my list, really, was he was somebody who come into the sport with, you know, he wasn't a big name at all when he first broke into the UFC, but he was talking a big game. He was, you know, like I say, he's giving it all the talk, and he was doing different things to everyone else. He was doing lots of movements and techniques that hadn't ever been seen before, and you know, and a lot of the time he was doing things that were not regularly seen in the UFC. Okay, going down the list again. Usain Bolt used to stand on the start line, messing about, smiling, waving at the crowd, doing his hair, high-fiving the officials, stuff like that. And again, people thought that was a bit strange. You know, he's somebody who perhaps they thought, you know, was not focused, was not doing the correct things to warm up and so on, and people were kind of a little bit, you know, well, he'll, you know, kind of almost like he'll learn as time goes along, he'll learn to do it properly. And Muhammad Ali, a lot of you will definitely know Muhammad Ali, but you know, back in the day, he was, you know, trash talking in a lot of sports, especially things like the UFC and boxing. Now they're all very commonplace, but he was the original. He was trash talking when no one else was trash talking ever, really. And that all kind of more or less come from him, really. And he was doing that. People thought he was disrespectful. He was dancing. His style of boxing was dancing in the ring when people were flat-footed, and people thought that you couldn't generate any power by dancing around. And he was against the war in Vietnam. Was very strong against going to war, and didn't go to war, and said he had no quarrel with the Viet Cong, as he said back then, which is a famous quote. And he decided that he was not going to go, and got into quite a lot of trouble through not going. Again, people thought he was a traitor. People thought he was not a nice kind of person. They thought he was a racist person, and all different things were against him, and stuff like that. Princess Diana, fairly similar. When she first become well known and started going out with Prince Charles, she was sort of like fitting in at the beginning, and then obviously started doing things that were not correct, shall we say, and was doing things in interviews that she shouldn't have done, and interacting with people that she shouldn't have been interacting with, and high-fiving the public and meeting and hugging the public, which was unheard of, and not the thing to do. So going back up to the top, with Dana White, okay, the pandemic is still going on, obviously, to an extent, but we're now a year down the line. Okay, he's put on a number of events. Remember, a year ago, he was really working hard to get these events up and running and continuing as normal. People thought he was ridiculous to put his sport before, the welfare of people and stuff like that. And he said, I will find a way, we will do it safely. And he was doing stuff and going against the grain and doing stuff that other people were not prepared to do. A year down the line now, those people who are against it are now turning around and saying, Dana White done an amazing job. He, carried on doing what he believed in, and fought for the athletes, and fought for his staff, and fought for the game, and done a fantastic job, and obviously managed to pull off a genius kind of, a stroke of genius with the Fight Island and stuff like that. And he's getting all the praise in the world. He's now got fans that he never had in the first place, or before this whole thing kicked off, because it was literally the only sport continuing and on telly, and won a lot more fans. And now UFC is more popular than it's ever been ever. Okay, Conor McGregor. Remember I was saying he was doing all these different techniques, different movements, different style of fighting that people had never seen, and he got a lot of stick from. There's actually some footage on the internet of some high-level fighters who were, they're standing around laughing at his, or looking at a video of his training, doing movement stuff with a movement coach, and they were all kind of basically mocking his training techniques, and saying that he'll learn, he'll find out the hard way that those aren't the correct training methods, and all this and that, all the different things that people said he couldn't do and he wouldn't do, and he was he'd got it all wrong. And as time went on, and he started beating more and more people, taking out big names, and then eventually took out the pound for pound best fighter on the planet at the time, Jose Aldo, in 13 seconds. And then all of a sudden everyone started to take notice, and then he's gone on to bigger and better things, certainly in terms of like financially and stuff. He's massive now, and people are now looking at what he did and said that was, again, it was brilliant. So and then it got to a stage where people were like, I want a movement coach, we're going to start doing this type of bouncy type movement, which ironically in his last fight he'd gone away from again and started to be more traditional with his style, and lost. and people were saying he needs to now go back to this bouncy style, this kind of like slick kind of movement that he was doing, which, if you remember, everyone was laughing at, and that's what everyone's now saying he should go back to. So it's funny how things turn around, really. Now, Usain Bolt, again, doing hair on the start line. At one time, everyone kind of thought, well, he's not focused. He's not really, if he's this good now, think how good he'll be when he's focused. And he was doing that at the Olympics, and it got to a stage where he just won everything and took all the records and become the greatest sprinter of all time. And then what happens? Everyone's on the line doing their hair, kind of smiling and waving and messing about and doing silly antics on the line, and they're clearly copying Usain Bolt because they're thinking, well, that obviously works. That's the way to go. Muhammad Ali, probably the most famous one out of all of those guys, really, in terms of how he managed to sort of not just turn the opinions of people round from his sport, but sport in general. People from all different sports take bits of Ali's personality and bits of his kind of training, his training methods and his training kind of ideas, and some of his trash talking and all those different things, and mental warfare, that's all been taken from him. And there was a time when people laughed at him and thought he was a complete lunatic to an extent, thought he was a bit unhinged or unstable, and people used to think that was not the way to approach a fight. And now every man and his dog does it. Okay. Now, who else did we have? Oh, Princess Diana. Obviously, at one stage, people were saying what she's doing is not right, and they need to rein her in, and she's, and then obviously, as we know now, obviously things didn't go well in the end for her, but the reaction to her death just showed how well loved she was now. She was kind of the people's princess and all that sort of thing, and that was just because she was doing what she was doing, acting in a way that nobody else had acted in history before. And now we see a lot of other royals now acting in a similar manner, talking to people in a different way, and doing things that they never would have done before she was around. All right, so we could pick out all different types of people. I've just picked out some random names there, but there's all sorts of leaders and scientists and inventors and artists and stuff that we could pick out who have similar type of stories, and the message really is about being different. Okay, now I've said this before in previous videos, but I was always one for wanting to follow the crowd. I always looked at what the people who had what I had, and I just wanted to be like them, and I just thought, right, okay, I've got to be this type of person, I've got to train like that, and I've got to act like that, and I've got to fit in there, and go and tick this box and all this and that. And it was all a case of I'd listen to certain authority figures. I would listen to a single authority figure, whether it be a parent or a teacher or a coach or a doctor or a policeman or whoever, someone in authority. But that if one person told me that was how to do it, well, that was it. That was okay. Well, I'll go with that then. That's what you need to do. Now I don't. This is where I'm different now. Okay, and I'm taking more of a leaf out of those people's books that I spoke about earlier. I don't listen to one person. I don't listen to anyone in particular. I just listen to everyone. I listen to everyone, and I listen to every opinion on every subject, whether it be training, whether it be on coaching, whether it be on lots of different other subjects that are not related to martial arts or training or anything. And I look at everything. I get all the opinions from all the different people I respect, people I don't respect, and I listen to everything, and I study, and I listen to videos, and I read books, and I try and work out at the end of all of that what makes sense to me, and then I make a decision on what's right. Okay, so what I do then is trust my own judgment. And I think that's what a lot of people don't do. They listen to people, oh right, that's you got to do that, and then that's like the majority of people thinking this way, I will think this way. Majority of people doing that, I will do that. All right, now if you think of any of the greats in history in all different fields, they do something different. And if you think back to all those names that I spoke about and lots of others we could pick out, the ones who stand out are the ones who do something different. Now, I'm not talking about being different for the sake of it, shouting things out just to get attention. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having your own mind, working out what is correct from listening to everyone, taking out the bits that you think make sense, taking out the bits that resonate with you, leaving the bits that don't make sense and don't suit you, and work out the way you're going to do things, the way you're going to think, the way you're going to act. And to be quite honest, the message really is don't be afraid to be different. Dare to be different. Dare to be different. So that's my message today. That's the end of my message. Please subscribe to the channel. I do always forget to say that, all right, because I get engrossed in what I'm saying, and I do actually forget that we're trying to grow the channel. Dominic King, that's me, and we're obviously World Class Happiness channel. Please subscribe and give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Cheers guys.